Two things there. The apps that you speak about goes to the complexity. You know, when you think about it, I think it's important that OEMs ensure that they incorporate analytical tools and techniques into all of their engineering and deployment models as it relates to new products.
Absolutely. In fact, analytics really aren't new to the products I build. You know, at the end of the day, if you, the difference between the products that I build versus a consumer mobile computer device really centers around the fact that I have mission critical business purpose, and I'm deployed within corporate organizations to collect data. And when you look at analytics at its fundamentals, it's about discovering and communicating patterns of data that drive meaningful information to drive your business. And so from the onset, starting with barcode scanning, that's really what we did, is looked at meaningful patterns of data and drove information that runs businesses. I think what's changed around analytics today, though, is the computing power, the cost of data storage. You look at the options, the sensory information, and the amount of data that you can capture on a mobile computing device. Those have all come to a crossroad where now you can get much more information that drives intelligence around running your business. I often tell people we're kind of out of a four-phase evolution of analytics. You know, phase one was really about what happened, you know, whether you scanned a barcode, or for me as a product developer, I look at, you know, what happened on the device? Why did that error occur? Why did something, you know, in terms of making the devices better for our users? But, you know, what happened? And then phase two was really about why did it happen? So we started getting smarter about the analytics we collected on the devices to look at, okay, why did that happen? And we started looking at what happened the moments before that event occurred, what happened the moments after and drove that event. We're now in phase three. And phase three is the most interesting one, I think, for customers, becomes a powerful tool, is how do you start to say what will happen? When will it happen? And start taking advantage of the analytics on these devices to look at how will I predict and forecast what will happen in my operations or my business. And that's really where analytics is today. Eventually, phase four, in my view, has always been about how do you predict and actually change the outcomes of actions in the field. And we do some of that today, by the way, on our devices. In terms of wireless LAN, for example, we get very predictive of monitoring the networks and trying to figure out where the roaming sequence will happen. And we roam to access points even before the user gets there. We know what's going to happen. And so in some aspects we do that, but exposing that more to the operations will be a powerful tool for our customers.
Yeah, that's an interesting link through from the OEM back to the customer here, because what you're trying to do is to build the perfect product for your customer, the device that is perfect for them to do their job. And in the mission critical environments that we observe, you've got users out there with this device in their hand, and if this device fails, they can't do their jobs. And they're engaging with customers. You know, sometimes the only link that the company has with the customer is with that device in between. And you need that device to be reliable and not to let you down at a key time when you're getting a sign-on glass for a package, or if you're in a warehouse and you're picking and you want to keep your pick rate up, you need that device to be absolutely reliable. So, you know, the goal of the OEM is to make that as reliable as it can be. The goal of the customer in these mission critical environments is to make sure that their workers are as productive as they possibly can be, and that they're working as efficiently and effectively as is possible. So I think right now the state of the art almost in these mission critical deployments is that a lot of customers, they've got the devices rolled out there in the field, they're working, but they're not trying to improve them. They're almost happy that they're working,
right.
and they're happy that they're not having any issues, or that they're having a small number of issues. But there's a massive room for improvement out there, in the same way as you're measuring things from an OEM perspective to continue to improve the devices.
Yep.
Customers have this ability now, because of the evolution of the tools and the technologies, they have the ability to start measuring a lot more things so that they can improve their business processes and improve the productivity of their workers. So the environments are extremely complex things. The devices are very complex. The componentry inside on those is complex. They've got multiple radios, they've got scanners, they've got imagers, they've got cameras, they've got accelerometers, they've got all sorts of different sensors and capabilities. They connect to various different networks. So when they're on premise, they're connected to Wi-Fi, then they roam out and they move on to mobile, they swap over and back between those. And then, even if you've got that connectivity, the apps on the devices have to connect back into their back-end servers, and they've got to be reliable, and they've got to be effective and responsive. So if you look at what the customer is trying to achieve, which is optimizing their workers' productivity, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. Not just on the device itself, but with the way the user is interacting with the device, with the applications that are running on the device, the tools and the utilities that are on the device. So being able to give the customer insight into what's happening, being able to give them the metrics that are important to them, being able to analyze what's working well, what isn't working well, and being able to help them to zoom in on the areas that they can improve on is a really powerful capability. So if you can use analytics and the tools and technologies that are available out in the market now to let them measure important things and let them analyze these things over periods of time, then it's very powerful, because suddenly they can start to understand where they are. And mostly they have a vision and they want to get there, but they don't have the tools and the metrics to understand how they're evolving there and to measure their evolution towards the perfect business process.
And it's a hard thing to do, and even if you figure out where you're at today and where you want to go tomorrow, it seems like with technology changing so rapidly that you almost have to continuously relearn the lessons that you thought you mastered yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, and we've spoken about this in the past, but when I look at my product portfolio and how our customers are using it, 10 years ago, the average number of apps on a device was 1. And 70% of those were a green screen, terminal emulation application. Now if you look at the power and the computing capability out of the mobile computers with the sensors, the connectivity, the platform capability that we've built in, we have customers running 100+ apps on these devices, right? And so they're using them in different ways. So yes, as an OEM, for me to build a better product, I got to understand how those apps are operating and really integrating with my device and delivering a great user experience so they can derive better business value in the field.
Two things there. The apps that you speak about goes to the complexity of the instrument that you're talking about. But to Padraig's point, you talked about things going wrong, the number of things that can go wrong. With that amount of functionality in a sophisticated instrument like that that's working in these hostile environments, clearly that's an issue. So the more that you can know up front and to incorporate into the design, to the whole engineering and manufacturing of that device, the better off that's going to be, and clearly the better that's going to benefit, I would think, the end user experience.
Absolutely. I mean, just consider field mobility as a broad application. The number one issue users have is battery life. They depend on these devices out in the field. Think of a postal or courier delivery guy during the holiday season. Battery life and battery health is the number one thing that they have, right? So for us to deliver 13 hours of battery life during extended shifts of the holiday season is very critical. And so the batteries that we've integrated into these products have predictive life cycle capabilities. We can tell how many times it's been recharged, how many times it's been discharged, how often the user is, and we can predict when that battery will fail, so that postal courier guy, before he even leaves the depot with the packages, he can select the best battery that will get him through the shift. That's a good example, right?
It's amazing, you know, that there's such evolution in technology nowadays, and things are moving so quickly, and yet battery issues are the number one issue that people have in mature mobile deployments.
Yep.
And the issue is, I think, that nobody is measuring the kinds of productivity impact that are caused by batteries, and nobody's measuring how that changes over time, and nobody's really able to predict when you're going to have downtime that's caused by battery failures. And so there is a big opportunity here, even around simple metrics like that, for analytics to come in and really deliver huge value to customers right now, today. So we've seen numerous customers where, you know, let's take a retail environment where you've got somebody who's working on the store, they're restocking shelves, or a customer will come up and ask them if they've got a particular product in red, and so they go onto their device and they want to be able to quickly do whatever job they need to do. And we see these situations where these workers, they have downtime, they have to swap their batteries maybe twice during a shift, because there are a few batteries in the collection that are not fit for purpose anymore. So the solution is to be able to target those batteries. As soon as they're not fit for purpose, target them, identify them, swap them out, so that at any point you can say, okay, I'm in good shape, all my batteries are fit for purpose. But there seems to be a lack of capability to do that. It's not a lack of willingness, because it's such a big issue. People really need to address it. But I think, like I said earlier on, a lot of people are happy to accept the status quo, to run their projects as they are. They don't want to change anything, because they might just break something. So I think the tools and technologies are out there now for people to expect more from their mobile solutions, and they need to start asking questions of their suppliers and of their service providers to say, hey, can I get some insight into what's happening here in my batteries? Can you tell me when my batteries are going to fail? Can you tell me when my workers are going to be disrupted because of my batteries? And the technology is available now, and I think people maybe are a little bit afraid to go out there and to dip their toes into the water, but investing in this kind of analytical capability and getting that kind of insight back will reap the rewards multiple times over.
You're talking about insight into the instant situation where I don't know what's going on right now. The larger issue really is visibility, throughout the entire process, and how analytics enables that sort of thing, I should think.
Well, and it drives the inference of the information. Remember, I talked about green screen to 100 apps. For me to develop a great battery, to deliver the user experience and meet the use cases, that was easy in a green screen world. I knew exactly how to model it, what size battery. You talk about 100 apps, many of which now are being downloaded over app stores, which drives a lot of variableness. How do you drive the analytics to correlate battery life or expected battery life with good behaving apps, bad behaving apps? And this is where analytics is playing a big role in my world in terms of an OEM building hardware.
There's a lot of value of analytics, on the devices, but then there's also the conversation of the impact that devices have on overall business analytics and what role that they play. And I think one thing that people struggle with sometimes is just defining and understanding what people mean by business analytics.
There's a lot of confusion around that. I think sometimes people really need a good working definition. What would you tell them if somebody said, I'm not quite sure I know the difference between, say, a business analytics and business intelligence?
Well, let's start with maybe the simplest and I think clearest definition of business analytics. And in my mind, the essence of business analytics is making data-driven decisions. Now, there's a lot that goes into making that possible, but it's ultimately about making data-driven decisions. And we're talking about decisions on any aspect of your business, right? It doesn't matter whether it's supply chain, financial, labor management related. It's It's anything that you do that impacts the success of your organization.
And it's not just device specific either.
Correct, correct. To extend it to the business intelligence or the BI, comparison, and again, I think there can be a lot of confusion there, but the I in BI stands for intelligence, and that intelligence definition is not about smarts or aptitude, it's about data. Collecting intelligence on something, collecting information on something. So BI is really squarely focused on collecting the who, what, where, when, how many, of your business. And then the analytics extends that by letting you dive through that information and drill through it and analyze it and correlate it so that then you can extend that information into the why did something happen? Will it happen again? What happens if I change X, Y, Z? And then, for the real innovation, just by looking at things that you might not have looked at before, you can really drive some innovation because you can have some really enlightening moments. And that's where mobile devices, I think, help out tremendously, because to me, you can't collect enough information on your business, right? And mobile computing and mobile devices help you collect that information. There are some schools of thought out there when you get into business analytics, or extend business analytics in your own business, that you should probably first figure out what data you need to collect. And I take, and I'm not alone, a little bit different, view of that, where you should collect anything and everything. Because if you start to scrub what you want to collect, you're scrubbing that based upon your past biases, right? Here's the way that I've always looked at things before. Here's the way that I've done things before. Don't let that cloud your data collection. So use those mobile devices to collect as much information, as you possibly can.
Yeah, I think the old school of thought was to limit the amount of data to exactly what you want to do, right. And it was based on the tools and the limitation of tools that were in the market that, if you build a real big haystack, it's hard to find that needle. But in today's world, the tools and the cloud analytics capability and the processing power, finding that needle is easy. And so build the biggest haystack you have and then mine the information that you can get out of that. I think, that's the real change that's happened in the marketplace.
But I think the important thing for people who are running mobile projects to focus on is what they're trying to measure, what information they're trying to capture, what metrics are important to them in order to be able to improve their business, make things more effective, more efficient. So sometimes with the new technologies, people focus on the technology too much. With big data, with cloud, with virtualization, they focus on the technology. And really the technology is just enabling you to get at the things that you need, so which are those business metrics, be able to measure your business performance. So, a lot of people collect a lot of data, and they've made big investments in BI systems, and you've got huge BI databases full of data, and they tend to think that big data equals big value. It's really important to be able to figure out what metrics are important to you, so that you can start to measure them and understand where you are and where you want to go. So I think it's quite daunting sometimes for people to be able to figure out where to start. So if people currently have maybe large populations of mission critical mobile devices out there, they've got thousands of these things, and right now they may not be able to capture any business intelligence or do any business analytics on those mobile devices. So the challenge is, where do I start? And yes, you can capture all the data and push it back in, and you can start to mine that, and the technologies are certainly there nowadays to do that. But a simple starting point for me is always just to step back and say, what am I trying to achieve here? What am I trying to measure? And it could be simple things like, I want to measure the performance of my batteries because that is the biggest issue that I'm facing right now. Or it could be, I want to measure, stop focusing on the technology. I want to measure the pick rate in my warehouse. And I want to be able to measure that across all my different warehouses so I can compare and contrast and benchmark and get a whole improvement process in place around how to improve my pick rate in the warehouse. Now that pick rate in the warehouse is going to be affected by so many different things: the devices, the batteries, the networks, the users, different types of users. But if I can measure my end goal, which is my business metric, my pick rate in my warehouse, and I can understand how all these different technological and human factors impact that, once I have that ability to capture that information and to analyze it and understand it, then I can start to figure out how to move forward and how to fix these issues so that ultimately I improve my business process.
You know, you talk about moving forward, but I tell you, as David talks about business analytics, it all sounds so straightforward and so beneficial. I think everybody can agree on the benefits. The question is, I mean, why aren't more people actually engaging or using business analytics? And when you think about it, those people who are not necessarily successful with it.
Well, you know, again, going back to the definition, you know, of analytics, I think most businesses have at least dabbled in business analytics, even if they haven't really defined it like that. You know, anybody that has taken historical data and used that to drive your projections or your budget, you know, for the coming months and the coming years, you know, has applied analytics, you know, to do that. So under whatever term, you know, people have used for that, you know, the concept, you know, and the embracing of it, you know, has been there to a degree. But then to extend it into all aspects of your organization, there are challenges. There's some very real challenges, in having that happen. We talked about one, being how do you start, and technology is so rapidly evolving as we've been talking and we all realize, and you're going to see that in analytics as well, and it already has over the years, but you're going to see more and more focused analytic systems that help lead you down a certain area of expertise or a certain problem that you're going to solve so that you're not left to your own. But it still requires vast amounts, of information. But when people fail or they don't reach the results that maybe they otherwise could, there's several reasons for that. And, I like to point out to folks that probably the number one reason has to do with your culture. The ability of your organization or the readiness of your organization to embrace data-driven decisions. And we use Major League Baseball, as an example of that, right? I love the movie Moneyball, I love baseball, and I love analytics, and that's a movie that actually combines both. It's a movie about analytics and an industry that just refused to embrace analytics forever, right? Forever and ever until the last, 10, 15, 20 years. Yet it made such common sense that if there was ever an industry that was developed that could use analytics because of the amount of data that they have, in terms of tendencies in pitching and hitting and the impact of weather, bringing in external variables, that was the industry that could and should get great results from analytics, but they fought it because that wasn't the way that they did things for years. Now the whole, every team has embraced analytics and now that's just part of the game. But if you're in that camp, right, if you're not used to really embracing, that information and really using those insights that you get, then, you're not really going to get, any value out of it.
I think we can all agree that, as David says, change is difficult, but clearly the benefits of analytics are real. So maybe it's hopeful going forward that a change is going to come.